Hello and welcome to the Famalam podcast. We are thinking about the topic of friendships, and who better to think about the topic of friendships than Phil Knox, everybody. We have Phil and his wife Dani with us, and it's so good to have you here with Lizzy and with Lucy. We are looking forward to grilling you about the idea of friendship. So Famalam is a podcast that's encouraging people to think about how do we do families inspired by the values of the Christian faith? How do we center our family lives around Jesus? So Phil, Dani, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and particularly why we might have thought, Phil Knox would be a good person to ask about friendship?
Well, first of all, it's just great to be, we're treating this as a kind of mentoring session because our people are significantly younger than yours. And, you know, we aspire to have children who are young adults going for Jesus. So we're just here to kind of learn from you guys. But yeah, my name's Phil Knox. I work for the Evangelical Alliance. Dani and I are both church leaders here in Birmingham. And I also love friendship and have spent the last 5 years really researching, writing, speaking on friendship. For me, it's the most important, least talked about relationship in the world. And so great to talk about that whilst receiving some parenting advice. So happy days.
Nice.
So nice.
If you're not watching, Lizzie's currently showing the screen Phil's book, The Best of Friends. Choose wisely, care well. And yeah, we're hoping as we have this conversation to continue the conversation we had as a family in the last episode about how friendship works when we're kids. So Dani, introduce yourself to us. Tell us a bit about you.
So I'm Dani, married to Phil. I'm a Christian fundraising consultant and coach, which means I get to help churches and charities unlock their finances to achieve their God-given dreams. And I work with lots of big charities, lots of little ones, but I absolutely love helping people in the ministry of fundraising to raise money for their work. And then they get to go on and achieve amazing things. Yeah. Do a bit of other things, like we're governors of schools and some other boards. But yeah.
And your children, how old are they?
So we've got a 12-year-old and a 6-year-old, both about their birthdays, but both boys.
It's an expensive season, this one, in the run up to Christmas. Jumping November birthdays, then Christmas. It's we've been saving all year.
Yeah, that.
Just warning you, as they get older, you think when they leave home, it's going to be cheap. It's not.
Oh, no.
Guys, we've got bills to pay too. That's all I'm saying.
It's the bank of mum and dad.
Wow.
But anyway, with this book that Phil's written, my parents have this on their shelf.
So that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, what's been brilliant actually has been the number of churches, small groups who've gone, do you know what? We've never talked about this. Now, I'm making no aspersion just to the kind of age of your parents, Lizzy, but all ages of people are going, why haven't we talked about this?
They love your book. Daisy knew about it. She said, you do need to mention on the podcast that Granny and Grandpa have read the book and have it on their shelf and tell everyone to read it. So there you are.
They're the ones.
Highly commended.
Yeah.
I love that. So Phil, tell us a little bit about why you felt the need to write the book. Like, what's it about? But why did you write it? And what was the hope behind it?
Yeah, it started really, like many things, by accident and out of a place of real pain. So I had a really terrible pandemic. And this is my second book. My first book came out in March 2020, which, as many of you recall, was the week all the bookshops closed. So that was really discouraging and disappointing. But far more tragically, in those first few weeks of lockdown, we found out that my mum's cancer was terminal. So I spent the first few weeks of that season sat at the end of her driveway, watching her physically deteriorate. And she eventually went to be with Jesus on the 8th of June, 2020. Wow. And for all of us, regardless of the global issues that we were all facing, kind of personally, it was just about the most painful, lowest season of my life, really. And two things got me through: faith in Jesus and friendship. Because I think in those moments, not only in those moments of pain do we need people around us, but it was also at a time where that was kind of juxtaposed with social distancing, where I really needed people but wasn't allowed to be with them. So, you know, even things like like the funeral, we did on Zoom in an environment like this, rather than what you picture your mum's funeral to be like, with lots of loved ones around you and the proximity of people. And so I remember going for a walk with the Lords during that time. I basically prayer walked my way through the pain of lockdown, and I could tell you almost exactly where I was in the street just up the road from here, where I felt the Lord say, you need to write on friendship. And then just began to research it. Couldn't find anyone who'd heard a sermon on friendship, been to a seminar on friendship. Could find very few Christian books written in the last 25 years, if any, about friendship. So I just was like, why have we not talked about this? And yet in our churches, we talk about marriage, and we talk about leadership, and we talk about family, which is really, really good. We talk about parenting. We don't talk about friendship. And I think if you've got really good friends, that underpins so much of discipleship and evangelism and the kind of churches we want, and the kind of relationships we want, and the kind of people we want to be. So all to say, since then, I've been very busy talking about this great gift that God's given us, and that's where it started.
Love that.
Oh, man. Interestingly, obviously, the question we're all wondering is, what are the qualities that make a good friend? So what, in your book, you talk about the Jesus model of friendship. Can you kind of like explain to us what that is? What are those qualities that we're like all want to know about?
Yeah, Lucy, I'm guessing like probably most of us on this call, we went to Sunday school at one point or another. And I learned in Sunday school, the answer is always Jesus. Basically, if you haven't heard the question, don't know the answer,
Jesus.
90% of the time it's fine. So what I tried to do in the book was basically look at the way Jesus treated his relationships. And there's these astonishing moments, actually, where Jesus says to his disciples, I've called you friends. There's no other record in the whole of kind of Jesus' time of any other rabbi calling his disciples friends. And so a few things that I just love about it. First of all, it's Jesus' intentionality of friendship. So he's really, I think sometimes we kind of think friendship happens to us by accident. And I think especially the older we get, we have to be more and more intentional about our friendships. Kids are brilliant at making friends. Secondly, there's something then about the kind of vulnerability of friendship. So Jesus kind of shares not only his wisdom, but his whole life with his disciples, who he goes on to call friends. I think we're not very good often at letting people in, whether that's in conversation or whether that's just around our table, or even in our homes have kind of become castles, I think, for some people. We don't let people in. Something about vulnerability. And then the third thing is around Jesus' sacrificial nature of friendship. So one of the most gorgeous lines is where Jesus says, there's no greater love than they that lay down their life for their friends. Right. And I hope that all of us on this call and those listening have both been recipients of great sacrifice, where people have really done something extraordinary and just laid down, whether it's finance or time or something of themselves for their friends, or whether we've had the opportunity to do that for others. Those, for me, are some of the great marker points that we learn from Jesus, but also have the opportunity to play out in our own friendships and relationships with those around us.
So good.
Yeah, I love that. When you say kids are really good at making friends, just unpack that. Why do you think kids are good at making friends?
Well, let me give you one example. I was speaking 2 weekends ago in Northern Ireland, and we were doing this workshop where we get people to think about their circles of friends. They get these concentric circles, and you have to write down in the middle of the concentric circles your kind of closest friends, and then those kind of more peripheral acquaintances towards the edge. I was watching what was happening, and there was a kind of younger persons and children's table at the front, and they were like scribbling like name after name after name, and that was in contrast to the people at the back who were slightly older, kind of, the four of us who were slightly older on this call, Lucy, at the back, kind of they were at the back kind of going, and you were just watching these, the kids just have more. So I think, first of all, that's a real thing. And when you look at the graph of our friendships, right, dramatic increase at the beginning of our lives, then kind of really taper off towards the end. That's sadly how it works. But I wonder why that is. I think play has a lot to do with it, actually. I think you make friends by playing, and we get older and we play less. We're also in environments less where you're forced to make friends. So I think kind of school and uni and those kind of places where you pushed out into environments and it's kind of sink or swim, and you make friends or you don't. As we get older, we have more choice. And sometimes we use that choice to isolate ourselves, and kids don't have that. But also we're just really good at conversation as well, in a way that we unlearn as we get older.
Yeah, I think as well that perhaps as you get older, you're more self-conscious sometimes. Yeah. And children, they don't think like that. They just walk up. And sometimes I've experienced with our boys, They say, oh, I made a friend today. You say, great, what's their name? Oh, I don't know. But they don't.
It's true.
So good.
It's playing alongside, or it's just kicking a football. There doesn't need to be words. It doesn't need to go through a formula. Whereas sometimes as adults, we overthink it.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So I think we just get more and more baggage, don't we, as adults, and we worry about what people think. And I think you're so right. Like the confidence, the bullshitness of, well, I want to play with that person. I'm just going to go and kick a football or, whatever it is with that person. And I do think that plays a part. And how do you feel like we're talking about as parents, for us, our kids are like our most important disciples, and we'll talk to them about their friends. We want to influence them. What advice would you give to parents in how we influence our kids to make good choices in their friendships? Because it's interesting, Phil, because in your book you talk about radiators and drains to encourage us to make friends not with just people that we click with straight away, or in the drains, those ones that are a bit harder. And for us, we chose a school for our kids that was more diverse, lots of different cultures, different classes, different backgrounds, and in the hope that would help set them up for life. And that's something that was important for me and Gareth to help influence our kids. What advice, what wisdom do you bring there?
Yeah, can I tell you something really beautiful, Lizzy? That advice about radiators and drains came from my mum. So
wow, so good.
We're on a parenting podcast. That happened because I was really well parented. And my parents, I think, first of all, they really modeled to me that we're not just friends with people who are like us all the time, who are just really easy to get on with. But they modeled to me something beautiful about what it was to be a really good friend. And I wonder whether actually we're talking about the big principles here of parenting and helping our kids. I mean, Lucy, you can chip in a minute and say how good your parents are at this. But in terms of, I think one of the best things that we can do is show our kids what it's like to be a really good friend. And that involves diversity of friendship. That involves the challenges and the battles and the blessings. That involves kind of just the joys of friendship. And, I hope, Lucy, for you, as I observed kind of growing up with my parents, saw them really enjoying friendship, having people around. And like my sister and I would be thrown out the kitchen while my parents had Chinese takeaway with people. And you'd be like, who are these people? But they modeled something about friendship. And interestingly, my dad was a really painful extrovert. So he was just introvert. So he was really introvert.
That's really important, that key thing.
Thank you, Dani. This is why she's on the podcast. So friendship was really costly for him because all he wanted to do was sit at home in his slippers and not relate to people. But so I saw that cost and understood that. But I think the other thing with all of these things is talking with our kids about friendship around the table. And I'm sure I don't know whether you've covered this or even whether you did this, but for us, we try to make our meal times really important. And one of the things we try to talk about is friendships around the table and the lessons of that.
So good.
So just unpack that. How do you do that with your boys?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's narrating what you do. So, so we're modeling friendships is really good, but it doesn't happen by accident. And so sometimes it might be saying, I really loved hanging out with so-and-so today because when I'm with her, she just makes me feel great. And that's why she's my friend. And it's talking about it, but narrating the modeling of it. And actually, I've had a really low day today. But I spoke to this friend on the phone and she's always there. She's ready to listen. And that's why she's a brilliant friend. And then it might lead into conversations. So what about you? What do you love about your friends? What are the qualities you look for? But it's being prepared to offer that as well and talk about it ourselves, I think really helps. Yeah.
I like that. So it's not just you trying to coach your kids, but you're sharing how it is for you that helps them understand a bit more about how their friendships might work. Well, we've talked about how kids are much better at making friends than adults might be. So how might a child's understanding of friendship change through time? Our kids are now older. You've got a 6-year-old, you've got a 12-year-old. Is there any wisdom for parents, any wisdom for families about how friendship changes through childhood into adolescence, then into adulthood?
Yeah, we can take you as far as 12, and then I'm afraid you guys have to take over, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So, but I think one thing that I've observed and can remember from 30 years ago was, I think, first of all, friendship hopefully becomes more fun. We've gotta just celebrate how good friendship is. And I think I've observed with Caleb, who's 12, something of his enjoyment of friendship massively increasing over the last few years. And I think that with that comes a bit of, for he's a 12-year-old boy, a bit of grown-up conversation and talking about deeper things. You know,
Right.
Joss doesn't really engage necessarily yet on kind of big philosophical issues. He's 6. Caleb, we're beginning to have some really good chats with, and I hope that with his friends, I don't know whether you remember, Lucy, but kind of growing up, once you get to your late teens, you're beginning to have the deeper meaningfuls. There is such richness and joy to be had there, and so I think the first thing that changes actually as friendship goes is the greater depth and the greater joy that can be experienced from friendships. The other thing that we did, and again, this was the most helpful parenting advice we had when we had boys. We both read a book called Raising Boys, and it talked about how in the first 7 years of a boy's life, mum is the most important. In the second 7 years, dad is most important, and after that, friends become most important. And that's pretty much been true. So we've joked about the fact that Joss has one more year. Dani has one more year of being the favourite. and then dad's involved for a couple of years. So I think there's something there, but I think that's been probably true with the influences. And so I think you get therefore, if that's true for boys, we've not read the girls' book because we've not had them, but you get 14 years of being the most significant person in their lives. And then Caleb's got a couple of years to go, and then we are second-class citizens. But that's been a really helpful little journey for us to understand. And so I think that's one of the ways in which friendships happen. The final thing I'd say is I think we've joked about the introversion, extroversion thing. I think as you get older, you begin to understand your personality a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that probably in our 12-year-old, and he's understanding himself more as well as the dynamics of human relationships. And that's impacting his friendships.
And I think what you need from friendship changes. So when you're little, what you need is just someone to play with. Yeah. And when you're really little, you don't need that. You just play alongside someone. But as you get older, you need different things, and you need to not be lonely in the playground. So you're just looking for people to be with you. But I think as you get older, you need emotional support.
Really good.
No, our 6-year-old doesn't need that necessarily from his friends. But as our boys will get older and you hit teens, you need something different and you need something deeper. And that's why it changes, I think, because what you need from people changes.
And you've implied that from how you, parents, as mother and father, how boys might relate to you differently through that time. Interesting then, if from 14 to adulthood, friends are the most important bit. What are you doing, I guess, as parents, seeing that horizon to help your kids choose good friends so that when they become the most influential people in your kids' lives, what are some of the things that you might be putting in place? And Lucy, you might be able to speak to this. Was that true for you as well, as a female, as a girl growing up in our household? Just intrigued as to how we as parents help to help our kids make good decisions about who they are with, if they're going to be the most important people in their lives for a while.
I think from experience, like obviously, like Mum said, we went to a very diverse school. There was people from literally every single background. And I personally found that incredible. Like, that is the best decision that you guys could have ever made. And that's where I met loads of my mates. And it also put me in a scenario where some situations I wasn't always with people I got on with. And actually, you just have to learn to make that connection. I think making the right friends is definitely something that I personally have always not struggled with, but been up and down with. I think girls are girls. It's interesting being a girl. There's always the gossipy stuff. There's a word that I'm not going to say, but it starts with a B and you could probably guess it. There's just like a lot of like, I feel like boys experience it, but it doesn't caveat in the same way. So I think being able to understand that mum was a really great figure in helping me understand what was happening there in terms of gossip and, people who probably didn't have the greatest morals. Just how do we separate that, still being kind to them, but also like not letting that affect us, was just honestly speaking about it. I remember having so many conversations in mum and dad's room with mum about mates. And even now, like, that doesn't stop. I think friendships, you always are going to have problems. I think as we got older, you're right, you start being a bit more intentional. I'm starting to realize that now. I think in terms of boys, what was interesting was growing up, me and Daisy were always like, I really want to go for coffee with my friend, or I want to go out. And then when it came to Toby, boys just don't seem to do that. Like, it's really interesting. So mum was like, Toby, you've not seen this person for a while. Maybe you should meet up with them. And I don't think it's a thing of they don't want to. They just don't think about that. I don't know. But I think as a girl, that was always something that I loved doing was, oh my gosh, let's go for coffee. Yeah. So that's that. I mean, going back to the question in terms of like bad friendships, good friendships, I honestly think just talking about it and being really open and creating that space to be open about it, because that's something we experience for our whole lives. So making sure from a young age, you know how to decipher between the good and the bad. And then going forward, okay, it doesn't mean I'm going to not be friends or isolate them, but how do I stop what they do and what they say come into my life and affect how I live? I don't know what you guys have on that as well.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's things that we can put in place, or maybe things that you're trying to put in place now so that your kids are going to set up as best they can be to make good choices about friendships.
Yeah, I think we're talking about it's really important. And I am aware that our 12-year-old is on the verge of teens. And so we're trying to be really intentional now that he knows he can talk to us about anything. And
Right.
so it is like talking to him about everything. And sometimes he's a bit like, are we done yet? And that's okay. But when problems in friendships come, I want him to still be able to come to us and to be able to talk to us about it. We can't control who his friends are, but we can have influence to equip them with how do you spot a good friend? How do you keep hold of a friend? How do you invest in that? There was something we read Rob Parsons' book, How to Get Your Kids Through Church Without Them Ending Up Hating God. Just get your kids into a church youth group. Yeah, it's really important. Yeah. And so we can't control who they're friends with at school. And we've seen our 12-year-old change schools and, start again and make friends. But we're really intentional that he's in a church. We're in a church where he's got lots of friends. So that the school friends might be one balance. And that's great because he needs to have friends that aren't Christians, and he needs to have friends that are different to him because it's the richness that you get. But also we can then make sure that actually he has a good balance of those good Christian friends that when he is struggling with things, and when, as we've looked and explored smartphones and all technology, his friends at school think one way, but actually we've got Christian friends that are exploring the same issues as us.
Nice.
In the church, and he's got friends that are also exploring that in the church, and that's really helped. He's got a balance of those friendships.
So
Lucy, I thought what you said was absolute gold there about one of the best things your parents did for you was to put you in an environment where you made friends in a slightly different way. And I experienced that as well. My parents, we grew up on a council estate. My parents kind of chose to live in a tougher area than we had to live, and that was a real impact on me because I saw the difference faith made. But what happened then was my parents then needed me to be able to relate to middle class people, so they sent me on like kind of residential Christian residentials with people who were different from me, and it was just brilliant, and it made all the difference.
yeah,
We've done exactly the same, Phil.
I was about to say that mum and dad have done the exact same, basically.
But really,
So good.
really interesting. Just, I think as parents, we have to be really flexible in that. I can really relate to that. And it's really, really important that we know it's not about us or take it personally. It's about going with the flow, being flexible and letting them sort of guide us with that, but also not putting them in a box, because I mean, like, I bet your boys are both really, really different. So like discipline or boundaries, one thing could work really well with one of them and it completely fail with the other. And so just learning about that. And I think that with friends, they'll approach friendship in different ways, won't they? And so what advice would you give parents who are struggling at the moment with their kids' friendships, where there's maybe some conflicts or there's bullying? What advice would you give in that?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. And my natural tendency is to want to come in and rescue. And so if I feel like one of the boys are being bullied, then I want to get in there and I want to sort it. And I'm going to go up the school and I'm going to talk to the teacher. But
And you'd be very good.
But actually, that's just not. It's not going to help them. That's going to help me feel like I'm doing something, but it's not going to help them. And I think Lucy, you said earlier that we still have conflict in friendships as we get older, and potentially we'll be in work situations where we feel like we're being bullied or we're being victimized. And so, if when our kids are younger, we've rescued them all the time, we've not equipped them. So I think it's trying not to rescue. I think trying to normalize it in terms of actually this happens, and I'm an adult and this happens in my friendships too. And that doesn't mean that the friendship is over and that it can't be mended and sorted. It can, but actually conflict sometimes is needed and we go through that.
That's good.
But I think really trying to listen and validate, this really hurts and how does that feel? And I'm really sorry that hurts and I get it. And I think sometimes as parents, we get the brunt of things when our kids are really struggling. And that's okay because that's what we're here for. But then I guess I'm not saying we've got this right. And each week there is a new parenting challenge for us.
This is very dangerous for us to be on at this stage.
Yeah.
You know how you were saying, we've waited before we've done this. You've stitched us right up here. Our kids will listen to this and will play this back to us in the future.
You wrote the book. Come on.
20 years, Gareth.
I think what we try and do is talk through options. Okay, so what are your options? And do you want to talk to the teacher? And it's usually no, never. Okay, but that's an option. And we're not going to do that. But what else do you want to do? What else do you want to do? Yeah. And then saying, okay, how's it going to go today? What are you going to try? Just keep on checking in them. And there are sometimes when you do need to come in. And there are sometimes when you go, no, it's gone too far now. I'm telling you I'm coming into the school. Right. But this is gone beyond. And there are times when that you absolutely have to do that. But I would always try and help equip our boys with how to do it themselves. I'd also talk about where I'm struggling. We've been through some things actually. I've said, you know what, this is really similar to something that happened to me, and not to say this is how I did it, so you must do it my way. But saying, yeah, I get it, it's really hard. But saying, yeah, this is what I'm struggling in friendship at the moment. And just trying to normalize it. I also think there's something really powerful in prayer. And say, okay, yeah, this is really challenging. And I'm going to pray for you every day, but I want to pray with you as well. And sometimes with our boys, they will want to pray. And sometimes they're like, no, you just pray. And that's okay. But let's give this to God because it is hard. And so let's ask him and what he wants you to do, but also to give you the strength and the comfort in this situation.
Yeah. So
good.
I think as well, like as we were talking about that side of friendship, sometimes we gain friends that don't always have a great impact on us. And I think I especially found that probably through like college, high school, when there started to be parties and drugs and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I doubt your boys are at that point already.
Let's hope.
But from what you guys have experienced with them, the ages that they are now, how do you guys navigate when actually a friend is probably not the best? Like, what have you guys done? Because it can be quite hard, and especially as a child, when you're almost see that person as a friend. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, we haven't got this sorted, and there will be many minefields ahead of us in the I guess what we're trying to do at the moment is kind of set the kind of the context and set the foundations for inevitable challenges that will come up. I was many moments of being well behaved as a child and teenager, and others where I was less well behaved, and my parents did the best they could with me and somehow made it through. I think for me, first of all, in terms of those foundations, I think it's all, you know, I maybe one of you said it earlier about the kind of that our number one discipleship responsibility as parents is to our children. And so I'm trying to be really intentional, for example, with our 12-year-old, just around some just basic discipleship stuff. And the way that I was brought up was that my dad taught me Bible verses. So we would get in the car every morning on the way to school, and we would learn a Bible verse from every book of the Bible. That's just what we did for the 5 years. So we'd get in the car, Genesis 1 verse 1, in the beginning God created heavens and the earth. Exodus 3 verse 14, God said I am who I am. And you go all the way through to Revelation. And then I was allowed to talk about football. It's brilliant. It was a great motivator for getting me to learn Bible verses. But now I'm inflicting the same on Caleb. So every Wednesday morning, we will get up and we'll do Bible study. We're halfway through the New Testament in terms of the Bible verse we've been learning. But at the moment, we're also reading through Proverbs. And, you know, I was just thinking in the Proverbs, there's this beautiful moment of father passing wisdom onto his son. That's the kind of context of Proverbs, which I just love. And there's that proverb that talks about a company of fools suffers harm. So at some point, we will get to that and we'll say, Caleb talks about friendship. And you kind of say, and actually, if this is true, if you hang out with fools, you will suffer harm. That's kind of, you're setting that up, I guess. But I think the other question to ask is, as Christian parents of our children, are you the influenced or are you the influencers? And I think what I grew up with was this mentality that my parents gave me of, you have this great opportunity to see your mates come to know Jesus. You have the opportunity to be a really positive influence. And whilst navigating all the teenage stuff, you can do something amazing. And so my dad was amazing with me, almost like coaching me into how to go and make disciples in the school I was in. So I ran my first youth alpha course when I was 13, because basically my dad bankrolled the whole thing as a lawyer, bought like a can of Coke and a bag of crisps and a chocolate bar for everyone who came. Funnily enough, we were packed. Word got round for week 2, who is Jesus? Everyone's there because they're all there for the free stuff. But that just, I guess what I'm saying is it kind of taught me I could be an influencer rather than be influenced. And I think I was influenced at various points, unhelpfully, but I think that mentality helped me to the extent that my best friend now was a friend from school who could have led me completely astray because he had a questionable lifestyle. In the end, Jesus won in his life, and he was influenced to the extent that he's still following Jesus today from a Christian background. I think so. What we're trying to do at the moment is set the foundations for that.
So good.
That is so good. And so where quite a lot of young adults are listening to this podcast, and I know friendships are really big there. What tips would you give to young adults, someone at university, someone who's just starting work, when a friendship gets toxic or it's really unhealthy? What are the boundaries? What advice would you give?
I think you need there's wisdom in making a call as to whether this is going to be a friendship for the future or not. So I think, again, to quote the Sunday school answer of Jesus had Peter, with whom that friendship, he could have got to a point with him where he said he's gone too far and this needs to be the end. But in Peter's instance, he doesn't. There's forgiveness. There's John 21 on the beach, restoration. Peter then goes on and the friendship's restored. And then you've got Judas, who betrays Jesus in another way. He goes too far. That friendship is too toxic, and Jesus lets him go. And I think there's kind of wisdom. Friendship requires such wisdom, doesn't it? And actually, that's where we have the hopefully the advantage of the Spirit that lives within us, the advantage of prayer and discernment, the advantage of other friends who can give us wise counsel at various points. I think there's a kind of threshold at which toxic friendships we need to let go. And or keep distance, because actually the intentional friendship works both ways. So intentionality works in terms of choosing some people who we're going to be uber intentional with in terms of our time and our presence, our vulnerability, but also we can be intentional about who we choose to spend less time with in the presence of, etc. And that creates distance just naturally. Friendships are a really dynamic thing. People constantly moving in and out. We don't have static friendships. It's an art, not a science. There's this huge movement in and out of our circles of friendships. But ultimately, it comes down to wisdom when we think about those toxic friendships. But I don't know any friendship of any merit that hasn't gone through tough times and difficulty at some point. And there has to be, if you leave that friendship at the first road bump, you'll never have the depth that you need for the storms that come and hit your life.
Yeah.
I think there was something in Phil's book. I know I'm biased, but it is a surprisingly good book. When he talks about these circles of friendships,
Yes.
I remember sitting down and going, okay, I've got 3 in the middle and it goes out. And there were some friendships that I had that I was investing so much time and effort into them, and I wasn't getting as much back, and they'd become real drains.
Wow.
But when I placed them on the circles, I was able to go, it's okay that I'm not investing in so many friendships. I'm going to really invest in these cool ones and this next layer. But it's okay that I just let a few go to the next layer, and we'll still text message, we'll meet up occasionally, but actually I've only got so much energy and bandwidth to be a good friend to a certain number. I can't be a great friend to everyone. So I'm going to invest in this tight one, and then it's okay that I don't invest in every friendship. And that was really helpful for me with some of my tricky relationships.
Dani, you're speaking to my soul.
You need to get that book, Lucy. For
guys, don't worry. It's going to be in my Amazon basket already.
So everyone, get the book. And you can work. Actually, I think it's really important, isn't it, to review your friendships and to look at it and reflect. I think that's where the book's really helpful and helps you. It's a really good tool. So what would you say were your top tips for making good friendships for our kids in helping them?
I think, first of all, model it.
Yeah.
I think we've all talked, haven't we, about how our parents modelled something to us. And I think for me, I'm a really good friend, I hope, and a really good husband, I hope, and a really good dad, I hope, because of lots of stuff I learned from my parents. And so I think one of the best things that we can do if we want our kids to have good friends is be really good friends and model something really beautiful to them. And that's about our diversity of friendship. I think the other thing is speaking really well of friends. Lisa, you talked about a word beginning with B, about what girls do, but sometimes I think we can witness kind of negativity around talk around friends. And I think if our kids see us constantly being about friends, what view of friendship does that give them? If we've just talked about, Lizzy, you've just talked about the toxic friendships, we could talk about that in front of our kids. We need to be honest, but actually that we could do damage in terms of their expectations. Talk really positively about friendship, about how good it can be, about the joy of great conversation and vulnerability. I think that's really important. And also teaching them things, teaching them skills. So I know how to have a good conversation because my parents modeled that, but also taught me about asking good questions and helping. You know what? One of the reasons adult friendship is in such decline at the moment is we don't teach people how to build the relational muscles, how to have good conversations, and how to grow that. I think if we need to learn that ourselves, but also we need to pass that on to our kids so that when Caleb's having conversations with his teenage friends, he doesn't just talk about FIFA or the superficial stuff, but learns to have the richness of conversation that we can have, all of which leads to deeper relationships.
It feels like it's coaching, not controlling.
Yeah.
So you can't control it all, but we can coach. And I guess that's what we're trying to do, is the coaching, and it's the modeling it, it's talking, it's making it all right to talk about, and we're sharing honestly when it's tough for us, so it's normalized. But yeah, just alongside, we're cheerleaders for our children, aren't we? As parents, we cheer them on. So let them go make friendships, but run alongside them, cheering them on in them.
Love that.
Love
so
that.
good. So good. And more wisdom from Phil's book, The Best of Friends. Go and get it. It's amazing. And he has another one.
Yeah, just out or coming out?
Just out.
Good News People, co-written with Gav Calver. Hopeful Evangelicals, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Looking forward. I haven't read it yet, but looking forward to getting into that. And Phil, Dani, thank you
Yes.
so much for your time. Thanks for sharing your wisdom that you feel confident in about friendships from the study that you've done, and the wisdom about parenting that you are still working on.
Yeah, very much.
Thank you for sharing anyway. We appreciate your vulnerability
Absolutely.
in all of that. And I think that will be encouraging to everyone who's been listening and watching. Thank you so much. Don't forget, you can send in questions. We'd love to hear from you at hello@famalampod.com. You can follow us on Instagram at famalampod and send us questions there. We'd love for you to like and share and review and all the things that you do with podcasts to help encourage other families to follow Jesus as best we can as we try and raise our kids for the kingdom of God and for his glory. So Dani and Phil, thanks so much for joining us. Bless you. We'll see you again soon. Bye.